Oni, Road to Be the Mightiest Oni, released on March 9th for the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, PC, Steam, and the Nintendo Switch. Now, this is not a full review. This is only my first impressions because I've really only played probably about 2 hours or so. But it is a very, very interesting game, and I wanted to talk about it because I think that a lot of people are probably like me, and they're not really sure what to expect with this game. So the developers say that it is like Zelda, and in a certain degree it is. It definitely has this vibe of it, but actually what I was picking up a lot more was a vibe of a very older game called ICO, or maybe even Shadows of the Colossus. Now, that's only in like style itself. The game's pretty like kind of quiet, and there's a lot of like music and a lot of like kind of looking around the world and stuff. There is no dialogue to the game. It's kind of a quiet game in that right, but there is a lot of different scenes that you'll see where the text is kind of on the screen in this stylized way that kind of helps you learn about the story. There's also little kind of spirits that you can find. What's the main gameplay like? So the core of the game takes place on this very special island, and you play as a demon who has come to this island to become stronger and more powerful. You have to complete a series of challenges which will help you do so to become the mightiest Oni. What you learn about when you get to this island, though, is you're not the first one, not even by a long shot, and there's been plenty of others that have passed trying to do these trials. Very few, if any, have ever left the island and completed all of the challenges. Pretty much everything that you go through has to do with different spirits, and a lot of the challenges that you find, in fact, all the challenges that you find, you kind of go up to these little shadows of past spirits, which I can only guess are the spirits of the past, and you'll enter into like kind of a challenge map, so to speak. It's on the same area that you're at, but there's different parameters for everything. So it starts off kind of normal with a lot of different tutorials, but the basics is that there's a number of enemies and you have to defeat them. And as you keep playing, you'll encounter more enemies and even bosses as it goes on. And once you've defeated them all, you're able to continue and move on to the next challenge, which will pop up on the map. The map will also kind of expand more. When you start off, you have a very, very, very limited selection of the island that you can even go on. But you will find a lot of different things to do. Some of which are, basic collectible stuff. There's mushrooms, and they are the currency of the island. And as you continue to play through the beginning of the game, you'll actually find a little vendor that comes to the island. He tells you owe him some money, so it's kind of a little Tom Nook situation. You pay him back those mushrooms, but after that, you can use his store freely, and you can get cool stuff. There's a couple of different cosmetic items for the creature itself, as well as some weapons. And the weapons are actually pretty fun and a little different from each other. They all kind of have a special ability, and I've had a lot of fun kind of gathering mushrooms and trying those out in the different challenges. Another thing that they introduce a little bit later is the ability to find hidden spirits on the island. Now, one thing that I didn't mention is that this is kind of a two main character game, and they play simultaneously to each other. So you have your basic Oni that you play as, trying to get powerful and stronger, but you also find this little spirit buddy that comes with you and hangs out and assists you. I was kind of worried about how the controls would work, but honestly they control pretty fine. You can get used to controlling both of them at the same time. Often you're just kind of mostly focusing on one over the other. But your little ghost guy, he can move away from you, and he has a number of things he can do. Sometimes he can knock the enemies down and help you get their spirit orbs. Other times, you can have him go out and get different things for you, like these spirits that he finds. He has an ability that makes a sphere around him that makes the enemies appear. So that works out pretty good. And it's one of those things that they added into the game to allow you to get more hearts. So every 4 of these hidden spirits that you find in the game, you return them back to a stone and you get your hearts. But not quite that simple, because every now and then when you catch these spirits, if you're too far away from the main stone, you might find yourself getting chased after by a gigantic, horrifying, and creepy giant beast, which chases you much faster than you can move. You'll have to find the little spirit stones that you've lit up around the island, and they'll create little invisibility areas for you to hide in and wait it out until the giant guy walks away, and then you can keep running towards your initial spirit stone that you get. It's kind of exhilarating in a way. I know it's not really the most wild thing to do, but it is kind of fun, and it does kind of get your heart pumping when it happens. It seems to just be random, though there could be criteria that are unlocking it that I'm not really aware of, but it makes it kind of fun. I think the devs call it a hide and seek mechanic, and it feels like that. One of the major things that I have to note about this game is the music. They have a really, really robust soundtrack, and I actually would like to stream this so that you guys can hear it, because everything just kind of pieces together in a really smooth and stylistic way. The game is very, very, very chill. It almost reminds me of Tasamachi, which we covered a while back on the page. And it's just a nice little vibe to roll through and experience this world and kind of check it out. I think on the downside, I would have to say that, again, it feels really rinse and repeaty, and I've only played so much of the game so far. The story kind of unlocks every so many missions that you do, but for the most part, you're just kind of doing a mission, unlocking a mission, doing a mission, unlocking a mission, and every now and then you're required to have a certain amount of hearts, so you have to go find these little spirits and get enough hearts to complete that next mission. The enemy diversity really helps a lot, and they have different types of challenges which you can do. It's not all just smashing enemies, though it mostly is. Some of it's actually where you have to do protection missions, which I think are actually really unloved by most people, including myself, but they're not too terrible in this one. The storekeeper that you have often likes to go on little adventures different places, and as he does, he gets attacked by a lot of different demon spirits around, so you got to protect him as he tries to get to where he needs to go to. It kind of adds a little bit of diversity into it, and you also have these boss fights, and the boss fights are actually really exhilarating. The bosses are very, very hard to fight. I've only fought the first one, and it's really hard to even get to him. Most of the time, you're just trying to evade him and dodge him a whole bunch. One thing that did help out a ton is there is a special ability which you can get in the game. It only goes off so often, but when you can use it, it makes this cool little cutscene saying "Invincible" on the screen, and it does a big area attack that goes around, and it hits the enemies pretty hard and is super useful for bosses, especially if you can't get really right on top of them. Most of the weapons at the very beginning of the game are very, very short range. As well as a basic attack and evade, you also have the ability to use a hold mechanism where you hold your weapon, and once it blinks, you can let go of it and you'll spin around in a circle and damage a bunch of enemies around you. A lot of games have that, it's pretty standard in Zelda games, but it is very, very necessary in this game at times. Some of the missions, like I said, they add some diversity mechanics into it, and one of them is the final round will have a ton of enemies that come at you from a circle condensing down around you, and using those kind of spin abilities can be very, very advantageous for that. Overall, I think the controls are really good. Everything felt really snappy. The controls felt very, very smooth. There's a lot of camera spinning in the game. You really need to move the camera around a ton in this one. I'm not really that used to it, so I did get kind of dizzy sometimes, but everything's really snappy. Everything runs really smooth, and I don't know, it just kind of feels good. It's not overly challenging so far that I've played. It can get fairly challenging, but it's not wildly challenging, and if you're going out and you're getting all those extra hearts and stuff too, it does make it a lot easier. I'm sure you could do a challenge and just do a bare minimum heart situation. Unfortunately, because some of the missions are locked behind the amount of hearts you need, you can't do anything no extra heart run or anything like that. You can have some fun with it. Yeah, overall, my first impressions are pretty darn good. I like the game quite a bit. We did get a copy from the devs, and I need to make that pretty clear. But yeah, other than that, they didn't tell me what I needed to cover or how I needed to cover it. And so I'm just kind of talking about how I feel about it. It was something I was really interested in, and very, very curious, because it didn't really show a ton off other than kind of this beautiful world, these beautiful creatures with a lot of really interesting kind of Asian vibes to it. I'm Dre with the Otaku. If you like this content, hit the thumbs up. If you don't, hit the thumbs down, and I'll catch you on the next one. Subscribe to Otaku for more anime news, reviews, and gaming.